Okay, so I think we can get going now. I think we're all ready. So welcome everybody. We got a lighter crowd here today, but that's okay. We're good recording. We'll see everyone later on YouTube. This is the September meeting of the Wildfire Safety Advocates of Waikōloa, and we're real excited. Our guest this month is Stacy Sugimura. He's the president of the Hawaii Insurance Bureau. I'm just going to let you go straight to it, Stacy.
Okay.
You can let
All
us know.
right.
We'll interject when we get there.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Wish I was there. It looks really nice outside. I can see through the window. Um, Today, what we'll talk about, I'll give you a brief introduction to the Hawaii Insurance Bureau and what we do. Our main focus today will be on the public protection classification. We'll talk about the history of the public protection classification, or PPC for short, how it works and how insurance companies use the PPC grade. We'll talk a little bit about how the Hawaii Insurance Bureau actually conducts the grading. So you'll know like a little bit of the mechanics of the grading. I'll give you a few cautions about using the grade, and then we can take questions, or I can field questions. But I want this to be really informal. So if you have any questions while I'm presenting, feel free to stop me, and I can answer your questions while it's on the top of your mind. So to start off, the Hawaii Insurance Bureau, most of you probably haven't heard of the Hawaii Insurance Bureau. We're a nonprofit membership organization of insurance companies. We've been around for a long time. It started in 1886, so well over 100 years. How it started was the insurance commissioner of that time got the insurers together. And at that time, there was only probably about 5 insurers, and they were probably all associated with the plantations. So at that time, the insurance commissioner didn't know how to compare the policies, because all the companies wrote different types of policies, and they all had different rates. So what the insurance commissioner of that time did was he got the insurance companies together, and they formed the board of underwriters. And so what they did at that time was the board of underwriters determined what the policies would be and what the rate would be. And that's what all the companies used. So for many years, all the insurance companies used the same rate, the same policy. So wherever anyone went, they paid the same rate and they received the same coverage. The only difference was the companies competed on customer service and how well they made payouts. So this went all the way through the 1990s. Until the 1990s, then public policy started saying, oh, wait, excuse me. Mom, can you get Kea? So, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Up till 1990, all the rates and policies would be the same. But then at the time, public policy said, hey, this looks a lot like antitrust when all insurance companies are using the exact same rate and giving the same policy. So at that time, advisory organizations like Hawaii Insurance Bureau started to change, and we could only be advisory. So now companies have the choice whether they want to use our material, such as the rules, the underwriting rules, the forms, and we now do only the basic rate. We don't provide a finalized company rate any longer. And then besides those things, we do the public protection, and then we do inspections on commercial buildings for their fire suppression ability. So that leads us to the public protection. Probably many of you haven't heard of public protection, or your agent maybe like made glancing comments about the PPC. But the PPC has existed for well over 100 years. It's since the 1900s. How it got started was in the early 1900s, there was a lot of fires around the world. So there was the Great London Fire, there was the historical Chicago Fire. And even in Hawaii, we had a big fire in Honolulu. The fire in 1900 basically took out the whole downtown area. How it got started was it was started as a controlled burn. They were trying to eradicate the rats in the downtown area. So they set the fire. Of course, they didn't have good weather forecasting. The winds picked up, and the buildings were all built next to each other, and they were all mostly made of wood at that time. So the town basically caught fire and had total destruction of the Honolulu area in 1900. And then also at that time, there wasn't good fire protection. I mean, they found out, hey, our fire protection was inadequate. So the Board of Underwriters, the organization that preceded our organization, they started looking for methods into which to grade the fire departments. And so on the board at the time was a man by the name of Alexander Chamberlain. And so many of you would recognize the name if you're history buffs or baseball enthusiasts. Alexander, he was on our board. He was actually the founder of modern baseball. He formalized the rules to modern baseball, but he was from New York originally, and he had migrated to Hawaii. So he was sitting on the board at that time, and so he had the means to travel around. So he traveled around, and then because Chicago had the Great Fire at the same time, they had developed the system to grade the fire departments. And so he brought that system back to Hawaii. So he was really the first one to start the PPC in Hawaii. So this was back in the 1900s. It has since changed, of course. So then a national organization took that and then they started developing it further. They changed it in the 1950s. They changed it once again in the 1980s. And so currently we're on the 2012 grading schedule for the public protection. So the public protection, it's a system to determine how well your community can fight a fire for structure fires only. So it's a 1 through 10 system, 1 being the best, 10 meaning you have no protection in your community. Although in Hawaii, the fire department will show up no matter where your structure is. The state of Hawaii, all the counties, they'll show up no matter where the fire is, no matter how far away. So, for example, on Molokai, they don't have fire stations at the very ends of the island. They actually show up. It takes, it's over 20 miles in certain situations on Molokai, but they'll get there. So it's a system of 1 to 10, like I said, 1 being the best. In the state of Hawaii, we don't have any communities that are 1, but it's very hard to attain the grade of 1. So to give you an example, there's about 5,000 fire stations across the country. There's only about 70 communities out of the 5,000 that have achieved the grade of 1. It takes a lot of resources and a lot of training to get to the point of getting a PPC grade of 1. So the best we have here in the state is in the Honolulu area, it's a PPC 3. So for a grade, when you actually grade a community, you'll often see that it has 2 classes. There's what they call a split class. So there'll be 2 grades. So for instance, the Waikōloa village area is a 5/9. And how you determine which grade you use is if you are within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant, then you take the lower grade of a 5. If you're beyond 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant, then you take the higher grade of a 9. Now, I know we've studied the Waikōloa area in the past, and you're well covered by fire hydrants. I mean, basically the whole community is covered. So most everyone in the Waikōloa village area is going to be the 5. Now, why they use the 1,000-foot mark is because generally a fire truck will carry 1,000 feet of hose. They'll carry anywhere from 800 to 1,200 feet of hose. And so that's why they use the demarcation of 1,000 feet to determine which grade that you use in the split class situation, whether it's the 5 or the 9. Okay.
What other things go into that grading? Because I remember what other things go into that grading? I know we were discussing last time. There's a lot of other components, right?
Right. So when we grade, we look at three major areas. 50% of the grade goes to the fire department, 40% goes to the water system, and 10% goes to the 911 call center. So when we look at a fire department, what we look at mainly training, how well they train the fire staff when they initially recruit the firefighters, and ongoing training. Then the next thing that we look at is the testing of the equipment. So they have to test the hoses, they have to test the fire pump, and test a lot of their other equipment. So based on the records, both training and testing, then that's what we base the grade on for the fire department. For the water department, what we do is we look at the community and you look at how many structures there are, both houses and commercial structures, and then you match that with how much water they can supply. So how much water in your area you can supply. So for the Waikōloa village, you have a private water system, but you have mostly houses. And so the amount of water you have far exceeds the amount you would need. The only problem is this grading is for structure fires. So we're looking at how long you can fight a fire for 2 hours. So in the case of wildfires, this grading doesn't match because we're looking at structure fires for insurance purposes. So insurers are looking to rate individual structures. Okay. So then the 911 call center, what we're looking at, again, training. We look through their training records, how well they train. We look at their systems. There's all sorts of systems. Like the old system would be through a flip card system where you flip through the responses. Now there's more modern computer screens that pop up. There's ways of tracking the fire departments, the fire trucks, to know where all the fire trucks are. So based on that, that's how we grade the 911 call center. In addition, we look at, do they have generators in case the electricity fails? We look at if they have backup communication systems. So those are kind of the issues that happened in the Maui fire, was that the initial systems went down. Then it appeared that the generators failed, and then they didn't have a backup system. So when we go grade these 911 call centers, that's a question that we ask is, do you have a backup system? Most times the response is, well, we're going to rely on the cell phone system. But in the case of the Maui fires, the cell system went down. So we always encourage them to get a dual two-way system, two systems, so that if one fails, they have the backup. So that's kind of like how the grading goes. But before we actually even grade a community, they have to meet certain requirements. So the requirements, the main requirements, or the basic requirements that they must meet is that, one, they have a fire station, and the fire station should have doors on it. In Hawaii, we're a little bit lax on requiring doors. So you'll probably see places on the Big Island. So like, for instance, if you go to the Four Seasons volunteer fire station, they don't have doors on their fire station. The doors are there for two main reasons. One is to keep the fire truck warm in cold country so that it'll start. So that's why we don't worry so much about that in Hawaii, because we don't have to worry about cold weather where the truck won't start. The second reason why you need doors is so that to prevent theft, so that people don't steal stuff off the truck. You don't want to have people steal stuff off the truck, and then you're going out on a call, and then you don't have a piece of equipment. So that's the reason for the doors, but we're a little bit lax on requiring doors in Hawaii. The other thing that a fire station needs in order to be graded is what they call a National Fire Protection Association 1901 fire truck. So that's just basically the common fire truck that you see rolling around. So a fire truck is basically a gigantic toolbox. The main components of the truck would be the amount of water it can carry. So it's going to carry 500 gallons of water, and it's going to have a fire pump that can put out several hundred gallons of water per minute. But basically, they have to qualify for what we call the NFPA 1901 standards. So we're looking for a regular common fire truck that you see rolling around in your neighborhoods. The other important component is that they need 4 firefighters to attend a structure fire. And so that's on the first call. So you can't, so for example, you can't have 2 firefighters show up on the first call and then 2 firefighters show up a little bit later. They have to all arrive at the first call, which not all fire stations can do. And the 4 firefighters, that's really, even though it's in the national schedule, it's really an OSHA requirement, because OSHA's requirement is that if there's a burning building, 2 firefighters have to go in as a pair, and then two firefighters have to stay outside. And so that's why you need 4 in the case of a structure fire. So that's the next thing. And then there's a minimum amount of requirements of training and so forth. And so those are the basic things that we need prior to going out to grade a community. So we get calls. I should take a step back, and then I should say that the border of the grading schedule is 5 road miles around the fire station. So that's the border for the grade is 5 road miles, basically. Now, if it's a volunteer station, which you have on the Big Island, they can designate the area that they want to cover because they're a volunteer station. So that's an issue in your area. Is there's a fire station at the Four Seasons Hotel, but they only designate that they're going to cover the hotel property and the houses on the hotel property. So what happens is you have high value dwellings on both sides of the hotel property that are beyond 5 road miles from the Waikōloa village station. They're 5 miles from the nearest Kona station, and they're beyond 5 road miles from the South Kohala station. And so people who buy homes in those high value dwelling areas next to the hotel property, they might think they have coverage or a PPC grade, but they don't. So they're a PPC 10, which will kind of cover, we'll go over in a bit what the grades actually mean. I just wanted to go over a couple more issues that to be cautious of. So the other issue that you have in the northern part of the Big Island is in the Waimea area, on the very west coast of Waimea, a community had built a volunteer station. The problem is they supplied it with a brush truck and not the NFPA 1901 fire truck. So a brush truck is basically almost like a pickup truck with a small tank of water, and it's just to kind of keep the ground wet. And it doesn't have the equipment to fight a structure fire. And so because they don't have the fire truck, we can't grade that particular fire station. So the very west end of Kamuela is unprotected as well. It's a PPC 10.
Is that on Kona Estates that you're talking about?
I can't remember the name. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. But I know they built a fire station there. I don't know exactly where, because we've talked about, we went over the equipment they have, and they don't have the fire truck right now. So we can't grade them. The other thing is, like we talked about, you need 4 firefighters. This is kind of out of your area, but in Lapohoi, they have only 2 firefighters there at the station. So only 2 firefighters respond. So we can't grade that station. Even though it's a county station, we can't grade it because they don't have the 4 firefighters. And the only reason why they have 2 firefighters is just because there's not that many homes there. So the county government doesn't feel the tax base can cover 4 firefighters. So they always only staff it with 2 firefighters there. So unfortunately, those people, even though there's a fire station there, they're considered unprotected or a PPC 10. So just to go over the grades. So like I said, like I mentioned, we have a grading system. The PPC goes from a 1 through a 10. Insurers can use those grades however they want. It goes back to, 30, 40 years ago, we used to dictate, okay, grades 1 through 3 is a certain percentage, like a 2% discount. Grades 4 is like a 1% discount. 5 is neutral, where there's no discount or surcharge. 6 and 7 is a 1% surcharge. 8 would be a 2%. And then it's 9, because there's no water, is when it really jumps up to a 10% surcharge. And a PPC 10, we recommend that it goes up to a 30% surcharge. Okay, so that's what we recommend. But companies now can just select whatever discount or surcharge that they want to issue. And companies will change it a bit because they want to attract a certain type of risk. So they, of course, want greater risk. So they might give, the lower classes even a bigger discount. And then the higher classes even charge a larger surcharge. So that's how the companies actually use the PPC, is we make a recommendation, but then they can assign the discount or surcharge on however they feel, which they will. I mean, it's just like I talked a little bit earlier about how we write the policies or the forms, but it only can be suggested. Companies can choose to use it, or they can go ahead and write their own forms. So basically what happens in practice is companies, when they first come into the market, they'll use all of our material. And once they start to get comfortable and they want to kind of tweak their policies and the rules, their underwriting rules, so that they can attain a certain client that they want, they'll start tweaking it themselves. And then they have to file it. So we file our materials. So all our PPC grades, we have to file with the insurance division. They approve it, and then companies can then use it. Once companies use it, they have to file it themselves. So just to digress a little bit, just to go over the insurance environment, insurance is highly regulated. And so everything has to be filed with the insurance division. Insurance division then decides what they'll allow and what they disallow. So all the rates and the forms and the policies, they're all filed with the insurance division. And the insurance division makes a determination on whether to allow it or not. So insurance is one of the most highly regulated industries. There's not many industries where the government gets to determine the price. So even the finalized rates, the insurance division gets the final say as to what the price will be. But then it gets kind of murky. I'm sure many of you heard of surplus lines. So in any insurance environment, there's 2 systems. There's the regulated system, which they call admitted carriers, and that's our members, is the admitted carriers. And then they have surplus lines where it's unregulated. Okay, and so the surplus lines can charge whatever they want. So what happens is, like in the case of a PPC 10, when the insurers don't want to take an excessive amount of risk, they may not write PPC 10s. And so individuals might have a hard time finding insurance. And so then they have to go to the surplus lines. And the surplus lines, being that it's unregulated, they'll take the risk, but it'll be at a much higher cost because it's unregulated.
Is that like Lloyd's of London and those like Japanese firms and stuff like that?
So it's the surplus lines is a lot, it's a worldwide market. So for a good example, the one that everyone would recognize is there's Lloyd's of London. So Lloyd's of London, they'll write anything basically, right? Any type of risk, large or small, but they'll price it to what they think the risk is. So that's like a good example. So it's a worldwide market for the surplus lines. Very complicated business. Right. So they're almost individually assessing the risk and putting a price to it. Okay, so that's just a little digression of the insurance market, how it works. And so on the, when you have PPC 10s, you might have some people having to go to the surplus lines. So like those people and those, especially those high value homes next to the hotels, it's a PPC 10. An ordinary insurer might not have what they call the capacity to write that. So you need the reinsurance to back you up because they're not going to take the full risk on their own. And reinsurers may not cover it because it's a high value dwelling. So if there's a loss, especially a total loss, it's going to be in the multi-millions, right? And so not all insurers can take on that kind of risk. And so that's like an example that would a lot of times have to go to the surplus lines. Okay, so that's just a little bit of how the insurance market works, how the PPC works in relationship to the rates. It's just a system of trying to determine your community's ability to suppress a structure fire.
Perfect.
So.
I said perfect.
Yeah. So one other thing, this doesn't happen to on the island of Hawaii, but in case you have property on Kauai or Maui, fire hydrants have to have a 4-inch opening. That's how they supply the water. The fire department connects what they call the supply hose to the hydrant, and then it fights the fire. Now on Maui and Kauai in the rural areas, they have what's called standpipes, and the standpipe is only 1.5 inch opening. Many residents will see that, oh, I have, they see the standpipe and they'll try to claim, oh, we have a fire hydrant in front of our house. But that's not considered a fire hydrant. So in those cases, they would have to take the higher PPC. Now, why they have standpipes in the rural areas is because 40, 50 years ago, no one lived in those areas. Those were agricultural areas, such as the Maui upcountry. Those areas was all ag country. And so what they did was they put these standpipes there. And in the case of a forest fire or wildfire, they would use the standpipes to try to wet the ground down so that try to prevent the fire from spreading. But then move forward to current time, people want to live in these rural areas now. They want to build houses. So they build houses in these rural areas, but all they have is the standpipes, and those don't count. So then some people say, oh, why don't they just switch out the standpipe for a hydrant? The problem is under the ground, you need a certain size pipe in order to supply the fire hydrant. And then they got smaller pipes to supply the standpipe. So it's a huge public works issue in order to change it out. I mean, they have to change the whole system. And so a lot of people, so if you have friends or family in the Maui or Kauai in the rural areas, that might be the reason why they have a higher PPC, is because there's a standpipe in front of their house rather than a regular fire hydrant.
Cool.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? Is there anything else that you want to talk about, Tracy?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Chris.
Stacy, did you say that the fire station down the Pogo Manalani area, is that a volunteer station? Is that what you said? Because
The Four Seasons.
Yeah, Four Seasons. So that's the Hualalai Hotel. So in the hotel, they have a volunteer company there. That company only services the hotel area, because normally it's a 5 road mile. Actually,
that one is a regular.
oh, okay, that's a bigger. Okay.
Yeah, and that's where the helicopters are based.
Yeah, that's what surprised me.
Yeah, that's really regular.
yeah.
Thank you.
So it actually used to. So historically, the volunteer fire station used to be at the Kona Village. And they actually used to service the whole 5 road miles around Kona Village. But then when Four Seasons took over, they took over the volunteer fire department. They used their hotel staff as the volunteers. And then they limited it to the hotel property only. And then there was a big fight with the county because the county actually gave them the fire truck. But that was with the understanding that they would service the 5 road miles. So then the county eventually took the fire truck back, and the hotel bought their own used fire truck, and then they supplied it. So they found a fire truck. Normally a fully loaded fire truck cost about $1 million, but they found one for 50,000, a used one, and then they bought all the equipment separately. Normally when you buy a fire truck, the company puts all the equipment on it and it's ready to go. But what the hotel did was they bought a used one and they put all the equipment on themselves. So yeah, that's the situation in that area. So that area, I mean, they probably could use another fire department right there, because the hotel doesn't service outside of the property. And just to clarify, the 5 road miles is supposed to be all weather road miles. So basically you have to have a paved road to the structure. So someone who like builds a house in the middle of the forest, that by rights should be a PBC 10 because it's not an all weather road to the structure. And that's the reason is, let's say there was a storm before and then the fire occurs, the fire truck might not be able to get there because it might get stuck in the mud or what have you. And so by rights, the insurance companies would rate that a PBC 10 because it's not all weather road miles. So it has to be easily accessible by road also. And so what we do is we have to measure out all the road miles. It's not as the crow flies, it's road miles. So you travel around and mark out the roads by the mileage. So then the other question that we often get, and often insurers ask us this question, it's not really part of the PPC, but we advise them because we have some background in how long it takes. So people ask, what is the response time? So fire departments measure all sorts of things as to how fast they get to a property. But basically, the basic response time is the call. So someone calls into the 911 call center. The 911 call center contacts the fire department and gets a response back saying that, okay, we got the message. And then the alarm goes off. The firefighters jump in the truck and they start rolling and then drive to the fire. And once they stop, that's the time, the total response time. So it's from the point of the call to the time they stop to fighting the fires is the basic one that everyone uses. So the timing of that is generally we give the caller and 911 call center 1 minute to call and report the fire. And then the 911 call center within that minute needs to contact the fire department and receive the call back saying that the message has been received. So that takes 1 minute. Now the firefighters, they take anywhere between 2 and 4 minutes to get the truck rolling. So it depends on the time of day. So if it's in the middle of the day when everyone's awake, they probably can start rolling within 2 minutes. They're probably rolling, maybe even less. So less than a minute, between 1 and 2 minutes. But if it's in the evening or when they're sleeping, they can take up to 4 minutes to wake up, get themselves together, get their gear on, jump in the fire truck and start rolling. So the time is we recommend anywhere from a minute for the call, 2 to 4 minutes before they start rolling. And then the time measurement is they're by rights supposed to go 35 miles an hour. Of course, I've seen the fire truck go much faster than that, but by rights, they're supposed to only go 35 miles an hour because they have 500 gallons of water. And so it could be a hazard if you're going too fast with the fire truck. But of course, they go faster than 35 miles an hour. But if you want to try to be accurate and measure the time, then you would measure the distance and then figure they're going 35 miles an hour. And that's going to give you the response time. So people always ask us, oh, so what's the response time from the fire station to such and such location? And that's kind of how you figure it out.
Cool. Bob, you have some questions?
Yeah, in California, they have fire code requirements for residential structures now that are related to wildfire risk. For example, they've virtually banned combustible decking around houses on the outside. So that because they found that the combustible materials on decks become major transmitters of flame into the structure. And so there, some insurers are saying if you're not up to code, we don't insure you. And in Arizona, they don't really have codes, but the insurance companies are saying, we're going to give discounts if you do certain things like keep vegetation away from your structure and eliminate the combustible materials exterior deck. And I'm wondering if any of the insurers in Hawaii are doing anything like that.
That I don't know. I don't know if they are giving credit. I mean, each individual company can choose to do what they want. I haven't heard of any company giving credit for that. But I do know that insurers do drive-by surveys. And so if, let's say, you have overgrown trees over your home, they might send you a letter saying, hey, you should take care of the tree, things like that. Yeah, but as of right now, I haven't heard of companies either giving credit or dinging a homeowner, so to say, because of a deck. But overall, I would say, especially the Hawaii insurers, the ones that are locally based, they're always a little bit late to the game. So, for example, we introduce new policies, new ways to write policies, and many of them continue to use their old policies rather than adopt the newer policies. And I can understand why they don't. A lot of the local companies, they're understaffed, and it takes a lot of resources to update your policies and your forms. You got to go through, you got to educate the marketing people, your computer programs have to be changed, the claims department has to be educated. So generally, a lot of the local companies keep the same methods that they used all the way back from the 70s. A lot of them, they use the same policies and they just keep underwriting the same way. So in Hawaii, no, I haven't really heard of anyone doing, giving credits or deductions for threats of wildfires.
So in Lahaina, what's your experience there? Are you seeing insurers refusing to cover properties, or are they establishing any other special criteria for fire risk as a result of what happened?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
In Lahaina, are you seeing insurers change their behavior in any way? Are they refusing to do things as a result, or changing it? Is that a good summary?
Yes, so there is some behavioral differences in insurance companies. Insurance companies, I mean, just overall, it's because of the Lahaina fires. They are hesitant to write in brush fire risk areas. So back in 2006 and 2007, the state conducted a study, and they did a very simple study of brush fire risks. And it was like really like three categories. I don't remember the categories, the titles exactly, but it was like basically it was high risk, medium risk, low risk. It was like three categories. And so then they categorized certain areas. The high risk, I know a lot of insurers, they got spooked by the Lahaina fires. They had experienced a lot of losses in the Lahaina area. So then they stopped writing in the high risk wildfire areas. But that's kind of like the characteristic of insurance companies. If they see one company do it, then kind of the other ones kind of follow suit because they get afraid. And then they say, well, if X company is not writing, then they become hesitant in writing in that particular area. So yes, I have seen a change in behavior, not specifically to Lahaina, but the whole state. So the whole state, if there's a brush fire risk, then they're a little bit more hesitant to write it.
Can you email us the link for that study?
Yeah, I can send it to you. I'll send it over to Matt.
Yeah, and I'll forward it out. Okay, just send it to me and then I'll send it along to everyone.
Okay. So yeah, that study was done in 2006, 2007. But in 2022, the state said that the characteristics are still legitimate yet. So they kind of legitimized the study back in 2022. The study actually originated from the federal government. The federal government told all the states, hey, you have to get a handle on your wildfire risks. So this was probably back in the early 2000s. They gave all the states some money to study the wildfire risks, and that's what they did. So it's probably unlikely that they're ever going to do a study like that again, unless they get money from the federal government again.
Anyone?
Questions?
Well, Stacy, it's been wonderful. This has been so helpful, very, very interesting, very informative.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll continue to have questions in the future. Really, really, really appreciate it. If you ever come to the Big Island, please let us know. We'll show up.
Okay, it was nice seeing all of you.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye. Okay. So we can pin ourselves out. You can stick around if you want, but we're going to do the rest of our meeting now.
Okay, I'm going to head out.
That's fine. That's totally refreshing. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Okay.
That was awesome. Very informative. Great. So hopefully everyone grabbed an agenda and we'll go through our new business. Let's start it with we as a group, as a organization, submitted comments to the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, about Hawaiian Electric's wildfire mitigation plan. It's very lengthy, our comments, so I'll let Bob summarize, but I did print out 2 copies if anyone wants to grab them to read our comments in full. But maybe Bob, you can give us.
And they're also posted on our website.
Yes.
So anybody can download them if you like, they're online. The issue that's in front of the PUC is whether or not utilities will have implemented the measures that they need to do to prevent wildfire ignition. The Lahaina fire was started partly because of down power lines that made HECO responsible legally for a lot of the losses that resulted in Lahaina. So that turned out to be multi-billion-dollar risk for HECO. And the PUC itself started the process last year, asking the utilities to tell the PUC what they intend to do to minimize their risk of being liable for fires. So HECO submitted a mitigation plan to the PUC in January. which has been the subject of a docket that the UC opened to review that plan. Since then, the legislature stepped in and passed a bill decision that would actually authorize UC to cap the liability of HECO or any future fires that they start. So this is very problematic because it puts communities like ours where the fire risk is higher than in other parts of the state at greater risk of actually not being compensated for losses that we might suffer if HECO is responsible for starting a fire here. And the fire plan that HECO submitted to PUC identified the power line that runs adjacent to the village on the Malka side. That power line that you see crossing the road out by the entrance off of Waikōloa Road. As the highest fire risk facility that they have on the Big Island. So we are not only at risk of fire from the fact that we are in a high fire environment. In other words, a very dry place with high winds, where once fire is what started, it can spread quickly. But HECO admits that their power line is also potentially the highest risk source of igniting a fire. So we submitted a comment to the PUC that, first of all, raised our objections to the fact that HECO's plan, as submitted, doesn't really explain what they're going to do to mitigate the risk of the power lines in our area. It simply flags these power lines as being high risk, but doesn't tell anybody, including PUC, what they're going to do about it. They list a number of options. One option being to put the power line underground. Another option being to replace the poles, the wooden poles that are out there now, which get burned down in a fire, with other poles that might minimize that risk. They also say that their way of preventing fire ignition is to shut off the power to the line. It shuts off the power not only to all of us here in the village, but also shuts off the power to the water utility that delivers water here, making it possible for us to have a fire station that can actually fight fires. So if they cut off the power to the village as their way of preventing their starting a fire, they put us at risk because the water utility will lose half of its capacity to deliver water to the village immediately as soon as the power is shut off. Because they only have backup capacity to run 4 wells instead of 8 wells when they lose power. And their backup capacity is fueled by diesel generators, and they only have enough diesel fuel on site to run those 4 generators for 48 hours. And what we saw in Lahaina was that the water utility lost power from the grid for 20 days. So what we're concerned about here is that those 48 hours of diesel generating capacity will quickly be exhausted. Then we will then have no water. And if there's a fire burning into the village, we will find ourselves in the same situation that LA was in and that Lahaina was in, when they didn't have water available to fight the fires. So we raised all of those concerns with the PUC, arguing, first of all, that the plan wasn't adequate because it didn't say what actually happened, what HECO planned to do to prevent the fires in the first place. But secondly, because the state statute that the legislature passed requires that a fire mitigation plan not only prevent fire ignition, but that it be designed to maintain the resilience of the energy system during wildfire events, which means they have to figure out how to maintain delivery of power so that we can get water during fire. And so we said to the PUC, you need to implement both parts of the state statute, not just half of it. The HECO plan only addresses the fire emission problem. Does not address the the resilience of the energy system in the face of wildfire. So those are the essential points that we made. If you want to look at the details, the comment is available online. And you know, we don't know where this will go at the PUC, but we are concerned that the PUC has as its primary mission the protection of the utility rather than the protection of the community. And so we are also talking to the county about addressing some of these issues.
Thank you, Bob. Yes,
Yes.
David.
So one thing, and I don't know the mileage, and you talked about. HECO has been into changing out, we talk about what some of the mitigation, you know, underground for changing the pole, that they're changing, doing that coated conductor, you know, protected wire line.
It's just the lower ones, it's not the upper ones, they're
Right, but I mean, it's, no, I'm just saying, there is some. You know,
Oh, yeah.
effort, commitment, it's not, you're just saying that we don't know what they're doing, they are taking. Admittedly small steps, but there is, you know, some immediate action and activity going on within 2026 calendar year. To harden
Yeah, but it's,
some of the lines.
but the point is that they're also saying that they can't use those coatings on the 69,000 K line. Right.
No, I understand, I'm just saying, as far as, you know, if they're.
It's a minor,
But I'm. I mean, you know, okay, yeah, it's something, but
Yeah.
not nothing, so.
Okay.
Well, when we had one electric here in June for the resilience of air, Colton, I mean, he from Wine Electric, he was. Very serious about wanting to focus on Waikōloa and help Waikōloa, so I appreciated that they have that focus, but. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens next, with the PUC, and we were not the only group to raise objections
That's true,
to the wildfire mitigation plan from Wine Electric.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, good call. So we did not intervene officially. We just submitted a comment as a member of the public. And it is on the public record. You can go see it on their docket. But we don't have formal intervention powers. We didn't get to have information requests and all of that. But Life of the Land did do that, Henry Curtis. And his final opinion position on the whole thing was that the PUC should adopt but not approve the plan. And that is exactly the same thing that the consumer advocate said as well. What that means, we don't know exactly. We have no idea what the PUC is going to do. But there have been many people raising these exact same issues, and it is very, very, very much on their radar. So,
well, to be clear, I don't think those other commenters raised exactly the same.
that's fair.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And we raised issues relating to the ability to deliver water to the village
That's fair.
in a level of detail that no one else has raised.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I misspoke slightly. They raised the same basic resilience issue where they were saying that the plan addresses preventing fires, but does not address the resilience of the system in all sorts of ways. Henry, I mean, also went on about how it didn't address other hazards. Whatever, we don't need to get into it right now. We'll see where the PUC goes in the next probably month. I would imagine. I would guess that there's going to be some news out of this. Pretty soon.
I agree.
So
we'll continue to stay on top of it and provide updates and as we get them.
Yep.
Matthew, can you give a recap of your meeting with Neil Azevedo from Public Works?
I can. So we had a meeting, Councilmember Hustis and I went over to HELO and spoke with Public Works Director Neil Azevedo in his office. about a variety of wildfire related issues. And one big one that we covered was Hulu evacuation route. After the Holo Holo, I don't know if everyone participated in that. If you did not, please do it in December or check out the video that we filmed of it. We had been told that there were new pull-offs, but we did not see them when we drove it. And I confirmed with Director Azevedo that Acting Director Azevedo, sorry, that there are not pull-offs. But while we were in the room, he picked up the phone and called some guys and said, go cut the pull-offs tomorrow. And they are there now. James has confirmed that they are there. He also ordered and requested, I don't know if these are installed, I gotta go out and check it myself. But he requested mile markers going down the lane so that people can know how far they are. So that has been progressed. And at the same meeting, we discussed the Puoko utility easement access road with all those big tanks up there that we could potentially use as an emergency evacuation route out of the north end of the village. And he confirmed with me that that is a DLNR managed property, but that he would be supportive of our trying to use it. So this morning I requested for the third time a meeting with the DLNR. And I will be escalating that soon if I don't hear back from them as well. So we're gonna keep pushing that, but that's great. And then side news, this is exciting. We found out just literally 45 minutes before this meeting. Tentative, most likely, I don't know, Neil committed to being our speaker at the October meeting. Awesome. So that's news for you, I assume. So Neil will be here in Waikōloa hopefully on October 8th. And we can talk about all sorts of public works related topics. I'm sure that'll be a well attended meeting.
Sure, we'll get questions about the intersection and
Roads.
paving, yeah.
So,
So, we just heard about this within an hour or two, so we'll reconfirm with his team before we put out anything publicly, but it would be great to have him at our next meeting.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
James, go on to the next one.
Yeah, keep rolling.
The next one, a couple days after that meeting, I went over again to Hilo. I met with Councilmember Hustis and Keith Okamoto, who is the managing director for Hawaii for the Department of Water Service at the county. And I still don't actually understand how they're a pseudo independent agency, right? Do you understand this, David? How they're, because it's like kind of a county thing, but kind of not. And like, I don't understand exactly the thing. He's the guy in charge of water at the county level though. And
It's definitely a county agency.
okay.
And the board is generally considered independent from like council.
Okay. Well, there we go. That's the answer that I was looking for. And his deputy Kavika Uehara. And again, we were talking about a bunch of different issues for the village area. The first one, which is kind of exciting, Ross Pacheco, who is leasing about 900 acres from the association for grazing goats, has had a lot of difficulty trying to get water on the property. I don't need to explain every nuance of this whole conversation, but we cleared out all of that confusion, and he went and has now officially requested he is going to get a meter. In about a month and a half, he's paid the fee, and they're going to get a meter for his goats to get water. And the reason that's important is that in order to be able to pen in goats and actually keep them in one area to concentrate them and graze them, you got to give them water. Otherwise, they'll die, right? You got to be able to drink some water, right? And so right now, his lot is fenced in on 3 sides, but once he fences in that 4th side, he'll be able to keep goats internally, and they will cut down on the fuel load up there on the north end of the village. And that's going to be our next sort of step, is helping him fundraise for that fencing here in the next couple of months. It's going to be a fairly substantial investment, and as much as we can offset that for him, that would be great. The other big thing, I also talked about the Puoko Utility Access Road, because that's where all of their water storage tanks are, and Department of Water Service is supportive of using it for an emergency evacuation route. And then the last thing that we talked about with them were the Lalamilo windmill farm. So those windmills
up north of the village were installed exclusively to provide power to the wells that are owned by the county up Mount of the Mauna Kea Resort in Pu'oko. And we were interested in trying to learn more about that energy mix, how much of, like, if those windmills don't go down in a PSPS event, if the wells can still stay on, and if that could be a thing that we could move for or push for Hawaii Water Service. And the answer is no. They don't like the windmills. They are not what they call firm sources of power, I think was the term of art that he used specifically. But it's variable is the point. And so it's not always on, and it doesn't actually provide enough power to fully power the wells. They still tap into the HECO grid up in that area. And they share the HECO lines leading to the wells. So if a PSPS event happens, the lines are the things that get shut down, and so they aren't getting anything off of many units. And what Manager Okamoto recommended, if we were going to push this route, is to really push solar, is to really push a distributed energy resource so that they can put solar next to it rather than winds. And I don't know, we'll see where that goes. But that was an interesting conversation for sure, and a good connection to have made. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And then the last item on our new business is that the governor has started is the state climate fund. And that is a potential source of funding for our road, and Governor Green said as much at a luncheon he had in Waikōloa a month or two back. Whether or not he said it to a room full of donors in Waikōloa or whether it's real, we don't know, but we're going to reach out to our state representatives, Tarnas and Richards, and try to determine their enthusiasm. I'm sure they'll be supportive, but we'd love to get it in an email and just make sure that they know that we don't want them to sit on the sidelines when it comes to decisions about how to allocate this money. If we could potentially get this money for our dedicated second road. Did I do that justice, Bob? Anything to add?
Well, there's an advisory committee that the governor is assembling to help him develop the budget for this revenue stream. So the revenue stream is created, but not the budget for how to spend it. So that's the next step. And the governor then has to submit the budget for that revenue stream to the legislature in the next session. So our members of the legislature would be critical players in that process. And we want to make sure that they are committed in helping extract some revenue from that revenue stream to help get our road built. And we're sure they're not going to put up with the whole funding for the road, but it's a question of whether or not the state can kind of kickstart what's going on at the county level by contributing a significant chunk of that. That's what we think is a reasonable ask for this process. And we will be communicating with our legislators to ask them to support us in that regard, and also to learn more about this advisory committee process.
So that's our next steps, is reaching out to those state representatives to get their commitment and to find more information about the advisory committee. And we kind of already covered that. We have our comments to the PUC here printed. You guys are all welcome to take a copy if you'd like. And that is pretty much all of our business. Any questions? Anything anyone wants to talk about? Talk story.
I have a comment. I did real estate in California. We have natural hazards exposure. Natural hazards exposure, talk about when all buyers or all sellers have to put when they sell houses, special flood hazards areas, geological hazards. We do have those. We have the different volcano zones, right? So there's just the seismic hazard zones, wildlife high fire severity area. Is this considered a wildfire wildland high fire severity area?
That's a really good question. So there is no designation that's formally adopted by the state for different areas. And that is something that we are very interested in pursuing. There's no specific news on that front yet, but there are rumblings of that coming down the pike in a little while. So we're gonna definitely pursue that aggressively if that starts happening.
That'd be good information because you can find it. I've been looking online, Hawaii, it will talk about other things. In fact, I just read that there's a law that if you're within the city level, that you have, it's a law that you have to dispose that to the buyers of your property. So that would, I'm very curious to see how long that's, the natural hazardous disclosures are coming as part of a seller's obligation to give to buyers all through these items. So, yeah, and then the other thing. Sure.
Part of the answer to that is that there is a report that was commissioned by the Attorney General.
Okay,
It was called an incident report for the line of fire.
okay,
And it was performed by a national fire risk assessment
okay,
agency,
okay.
an independent agency. And they, in that report, identified Waikōloa as having the highest fire risk
That's
of
what I thought
any
you said.
location in the state and even national.
Well, the specific quote was that Waikōloa Village has a 100% greater risk of fire than anywhere else. And then Lahaina has like a 95% high, 98% higher chance of wildfires than anyone else. So like, yeah, but that's not exactly a line, like there is no border or like wildfire, there's no map that says this is where the high risk zone goes, and this is not, that's official. There's lots of maps. I've seen tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of maps, right? But something that could be utilized by the government to designate Waikōloa as a wildfire risk zone that needs extra whatever,
Right.
that does not exist.
And if you look at one, I could show you one from California, like, I live right above a estuary, right? But the water that comes down will flood down below us, but not where we live, like our home. So there's all these flood zones, fire risk, they're not around fire risk, but I had a client that moved up to high fire risk, you know? He had to pay $6,000 for fire insurance with the fire safety in California. And then his homeowners, anybody can get insurance and stuff like that. So that's the curiosity, is like, and you know, Huala, that was very surprising that, wow. The next question, the comment I was gonna say is when he talked about the water meters close within 1,000 feet. I built a house one time in 2000. Evidently, that house that we were building in California wasn't close enough to a water meter. I had to put fire sprinklers in the house, stop and change the whole design to find, why isn't that part of any rebuilding requirements in Hawaii too? I mean, and then, you know, it's very interesting, you know?
Code updates are slow.
I know, that's why, I know.
Well, it's not just Hawaii,
Everybody.
it's the only state that has moved ahead with codes to address wildfire risk.
And fire risk too. I mean, I'm just talking
Yeah,
about.
residential
Fire,
fire.
yeah,
But California actually has in the code elements that address wildfire.
yes, yeah.
And it's the only state.
Oh, I didn't. I know that as the Paradise Fire, they put a cap on, what's the one in California, Edison, or whatever.
If you need that.
PG&E, yeah, they have caps now, to what they're liable.
Oh, no, that's what the law in Hawaii was based on. It's where, yeah.
And even though, you know, as that fire chief said. The Cal State's fire, you could have had a million tons of water, and that was not gonna stop that fire.
They said the same.
Well,
behind them.
You know, there's different aspects.
Fire.
During the high wind conditions. There was no way for the firefighters to stop the fire.
Correct.
even if they had
That's,
water.
I'm glad you.
And the first 3 days of the fire, they did it. But that was also the period of the high winds.
Right.
But then they ran out in day 3. And the winds died down. They didn't die down to calm.
Yeah.
But they were no longer high wind conditions, and they dropped from 80 miles an hour to down to like 30 miles an hour. Right? So the fire continued to spread to the community. And under those conditions, the firefighters could have fought the fires.
I'm glad you said.
But they did not have the water they needed to fight.
Happened.
Another 10,000 homes.
No, but as far as where's the water pressure?
Oh, what happens is when the house burns down, it becomes an open spigot, and so all it was 10,000 open holes in the ground and all of the water
Thank
is
you for
draining.
Educate.
So if you ever have to evacuate for a fire, you're just turning water.
Well. I don't know about that.
I didn't know.
I mean, I'm
Thank you.
Let's wait till we get that advice from a public safety official.
Okay.
But all the firefighters, all the officials involved acknowledge that when winds are pouring 75, 80 miles an hour,
Right.
there's no way that they can stop us.
Right, right.
But you've got to have the water when the winds die down, or the fires will continue to.
But I don't think my dog has even the ability. Do anything.
We sure don't.
No.
Well, thank you for the questions. Anyone else have anything? No, okay, so on October 4th, we'll be at the new market at the stables. We're really excited. Hopefully it's not too windy. We're always open for volunteers, so if anyone wants to come help, sit at the table, talk story with people, get some emails, we would love your help. And then our next meeting will be October 8th, possibly with Neil Azevedo from Public Works. So that's very exciting. I think that's it.
Anything else?
Thank you all for coming. Thank you
Thank
for being here.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks,
Have a
Patricia.
great night.